بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وسلم. Welcome everybody. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. So let us continue inshallah. As we said last week, we're going to have a look at the last two surahs of the Quran, Surah Al-Falaq and Surah An Nas, okay, otherwise known as Al-Mu'awwidhatayn, the two surahs that we seek Allah's refuge and Allah's help from. Okay. Now, today's lesson is going to be, there's a lot to discuss in these two surahs inshallah, so there's a lot of note taking and there's a lot of questions as well. Lots of controversy as well. So let's get started. The first point to note, and this is the first controversy, but it's an easy one, is that these two surahs, according to the great Sahabi Ibn Mas'ud radiallahu ta'ala anhu, when he narrated this part, he considered these two, the Mu'awwidhatayn, the Falaq and Nas, that they were not part of the Quran. Originally, Ibn Mas'ud held the position that these two were not wahy, they were not part of the Holy Quran. But then later he changed his view, retracted, and he joined the majority of the Sahaba, or all the Sahaba, and he accepted that this was the position, and these two surahs are part of the Holy Quran. So if somebody raises that with you, the issue of Ibn Mas'ud not accepting these two, because you'll find Orientalists or Christians, they'll bring this up, and they will say you have differences even in what is inside your Quran. A quick refutation is the fact that Ibn Mas'ud did say this at one moment in time, but then he took it back and he accepted that Falaq and Nas were both part of the Holy Quran. They are the speech of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now the second point, the virtues of this surah. Now there are many virtues of the surah. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said that they are, the Quran is full of virtues, but these two surahs, there's nothing more powerful than these two surahs when it comes to seeking Allah's help and Allah's protection. Al-Isti'adha, okay? Al-Isti'adha, which is coming from the first verse, Qul a'udhu, okay? That's the verb of actually doing or seeking Allah's help, a'udhu, from the first ayah. And Al-Isti'adha is the noun, okay? Al-Isti'adha is the noun, which means seeking Allah's protection. And here the Prophet ﷺ said that there is no two surahs that are more powerful than these two when it comes to seeking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's help or shelter. So much so that in a hadith, Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha, she narrates that before the Prophet ﷺ would sleep, he would recite the three surahs, Ikhlas, Qul huwa al-ahad, Qul a'udhu bi rabbil falaq, and Qul a'udhu bi rabbil nas. And he would blow into his hands and then he would wipe over his whole body, seeking the protection of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from the shayateen, from the evil of the shayateen throughout the night. So this is from the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. He said these are the most powerful surahs when it comes to al-isti'adha. Al-isti'adha, very briefly, it means to seek Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's help or seek Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's protection. When one is afraid, when one is vulnerable, when one is scared, the person turns to someone for help. Okay, so somebody may turn to their leader, may turn to their armies, may turn to their police, may turn to their parents, may turn to their older brother for protection and help when they're in a situation. The best of isti'adha and the only isti'adha that we can seek is the isti'adha of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That whenever we are in any difficult situation, we turn to Allah, and Allah is the only one who can protect us from any harm. And the Surah Falaq and Nas, as we're going to see, it's very much linked with the matters of the unseen, the ghaybiyat, so magic, hasad, al-ayn, all these matters. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us, or telling the Prophet in these issues, that only Allah can protect and only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can push these harms away. So these two surahs are purifying our Tawheed in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Let's move on. The background to this surah, so the reasons to why this surah was revealed. Now it's established in the Sahihain. So the Sahihain are Bukhari and Muslim, and if a hadith is in Bukhari and Muslim, we all know that that's the strongest form of hadith. Okay, so there's a hadith in Sahihain on the authority of Aisha, and here Aisha radiallahu anha, she narrates that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said to her that he had been influenced or affected by magic that was done on him by a Jew. And this Jew was from the tribe of Bani Zuraq, and his name was Labid ibn al-A'sam. Okay, Labid ibn al-A'sam. So this man is the one who performed sihr, and its effects influenced the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Okay, now how did it affect him? The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he tells us himself that it affected him only in one matter, and that was a matter relation to with respect to his wives. Okay, that he couldn't be intimate with his wives. The magic affected him, and he was unable to approach his wives. So it had an impact on him, and that's the only place where the magic took effect. And he was the only one who was aware of this. Now, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He sent two angels to the Prophet ﷺ, and this also hadith, we find this in Bukhari. I'm just giving you a quick explanation of the meaning of the hadith. Two angels were sent to the Prophet ﷺ. One sat at the head of the Prophet, and the other sat at the feet of the Prophet ﷺ. And one angel asked the other, what is the matter here? What has happened? The other angel responded, and he said that verily he has been affected by sihr, he has been affected by magic. And then he asked him, who is responsible for this magic that has taken place? And the angel responded and said, it is Labid ibn A'sam. Okay, so they even mentioned the Yahudi's name. And then the angel asked, and how did he manage to do that? And he responds, the other angel responds, and he said he took from him his musht, which means his comb. So he took some of the teeth of the comb of the Prophet ﷺ, which had some of the hair of the Prophet ﷺ, and they used that to do magic. We can side point, we can learn from this that one of the things that magicians use to do sihr on people is people's hair. Okay, and many times we find people's hair and people's nails as well. Yeah, that's why it's from the sunnah that when you cut your nails or you cut your hair, you don't just leave it, just throw it like that. Take care of it, wrap it up, throw it away, put it somewhere safe, because somebody who has evil intentions can take your hair or take your nails and cause harm on you. Okay, as we can see, it happened to the Prophet ﷺ. Okay. Then the angels, they continued and they said, and where is this sihr? So when sihr is done, it's done on an item. So here we talked about the hair. Some people do it on nails, and some people can even do it on clothing. But these things are taken, and then something is read upon them, or something is done upon these things, and then the magic takes effect on the person. In this case, the angel asked the other angel, and where is this sihr? Where is it? And he said, it is in the well of Durwan. So there was a well at that time. It is in the well of Durwan, a famous well at that time. And the angel said to the other angel that it is at the pit of this well. So it's hiding underneath a rock under at the pit of this well. So the Prophet ﷺ, he went there. He went to this well and he looked and he came back and then he reported to Aisha, and she asked him, did you take the sihr out of the well? And he responded, no, he did not take the sihr out. Then the Prophet ﷺ, he sent three companions. He sent Ali, he sent Zubayr, and he sent Ammar bin Yasir. These three people, and he said to them, go to the well. Now when they went to the well and they dug in and they found this rock, they found a rope with knots. Okay, and it had 11 different knots on this rope. Okay, so another thing, when it comes to sihr, and this is very prevalent especially in the Asian community, you find it as well in some of the Arab communities as well, that every other family is affected with magic, be it small or be it big. Somebody has evil intentions and is causing harm to people. Now one of the ways is by knots. Okay, and this thing that this Yehudi had done to the Prophet consisted of 11 different knots. Now very quickly, if you look at the surahs that we're doing today, Al-Falaq and An Nas, count how many ayat there are. There's 11, yeah? There was 11 knots on that rope. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then revealed Al-Falaq wa An Nas with 11 verses. So the Prophet ﷺ taught Ali and Junaid and Ammar bin Yasir these two surahs, and as they read the verse, the knots were coming undone. Okay, so teaching us that again, the answer or one of the solutions to removing sihr or magic is through Al-Falaq and through An Nas. Okay, and through that the Prophet ﷺ was cured. Furthermore, we also know that during this time, Jibreel alayhi salam, all the hadith I'm quoting to you can be found in Bukhari and Muslim, so there's no issue of authenticity. Also, Jibreel alayhi salam, he used to do ruqya on the Prophet ﷺ. Okay, so some people will throw doubt on ruqya. Okay, they say it doesn't work, or they don't have confidence in the ruqya. We know the ruqya is the Prophet did ruqya to himself, he did it to others, people did it to him. His wife Aisha used to read Al-Ahad, Al-Falaq, An Nas, and blow it on him as well. And Jibreel Islam during this time used to also do ruqya on the Prophet. So one of the things he used to say is Bismillah urqiq min kulli shay'in yu'dhik min sharri hasidin wa ayn wallahu yashfik. So this is narrated from authentic hadith that Jibreel Islam used to read this to the Prophet. Yeah, so even doing ruqya. Ruqya is a big subject and it falls under the topic of sihr, magic. I'm not going to talk about that today. Why? Because this is directly connected to the ayat in Surah Al-Baqarah. The story of the two angels. وَمَا كَفَرَ سُلَيْمَانُ وَلَكِنَّ الشَّيَاطِينَ كَفَرُوا يُعَلِّمُونَ النَّاسَ السِّحْرَ. Okay? وَمَا أُنزِلَ عَلَى الْمَلَكَيْنِ بِبَابِلِ هَارُوتَ وَمَارُوتَ. So the whole issue of sihr, if we go into the details of where it came from, the two angels that were at the time of Babel, the one was named Harut and one was named Marut, and the story that happened, I'm sure you're all aware. The details of that, we'll do that when we get to Surah Baqarah. Okay, otherwise we will digress. But the point is that sihr is something which is real, it's something which happened, and even the Prophet was influenced or affected by what happened. Okay. And also ruqya at the same time is something that is one of the solutions or cures on how we can cure sihr. Of course, the problem that we have today is that we have too many raqis, those people who are doing ruqya, and the vast majority of them, in my humble opinion, they're just cowboys. They don't know what they're doing and they're just overpricing and charging people, and they've given ruqya a bad name. Okay, so any little illness that happens, you go to the raqi, he's charging extortionate prices. It becomes a joke. Or even the raqi is not qualified, meaning he may know some of the Islamic sciences, but the issue of ruqya and sihr is not purely just sihr. There's also a large element of it which consists of mental illnesses. So not just because somebody is behaving abnormally, it doesn't always mean there's a jinn inside it. It could mean many things. It could mean he's mentally unstable. It could mean he has a bad background. It could mean he's been under the influence of drugs. It could mean anything. It could mean abuse. It could mean anything. So when we deal with these unknown, these issues of the ghaibiyat, we can't automatically assume that it's sihr, but it's a possibility. So this is the difference between traditional Islamic, I would say, counseling, or if you go to Western counseling, because they don't believe in these things. So for us as Muslims, we have to put the role of ruqya and the Quran inside of treating mental illnesses, sihr and magic. But it has to be done in a qualified manner. We'll talk about that, inshallah, more when we do Surah Al-Baqarah. And just on a side point, inshallah, there's after Ramadan, bismillah, there's a series that I'm going to be doing on Islam channel, and it's going to be on this whole topic of magic and ruqya and sihr. So you can see the full details on that as well. Alright, let's continue. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل أعوذ برب الفلق من شر ما خلق ومن شر غاسق إذا وقب ومن شر النفاثات في العقد ومن شر حاسد إذا حسد. Okay, starting from the top. So قل, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala orders the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam with the following. He says to him, A'udhu. So seek Allah's protection, seek Allah's refuge. And we also mentioned last week, when we did Qul Ya Ayyuhal Kafirun, the week before, that Qul here, this is another refutation against those who say that the Prophet ﷺ, he wrote the Quran. If the Prophet ﷺ wrote the Quran, then who is he saying Qul to? It's to himself. It doesn't make any sense. That somebody is ordering the Prophet ﷺ to say something. So clearly he is not the author of that book. It doesn't make any sense for that to happen. So that's another important point to take note of. A'udhu, seek refuge and seek aid in only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is our Tawheed. Allah says, Bi Rabbi, with the Lord of Al-Falaq. Al-Falaq, there are many interpretations of the word Falaq, but the one that is mostly agreed upon, and this is the interpretation of Ibn Abbas radiallahu ta'ala anhu, he said it is the daybreak, okay, the morning. When the night finishes and the morning is coming, that point of the separation, this is the Falaq. And the first verse that we read is Qul, I seek refuge in the Lord of the daybreak, meaning the one who has the power to change the night into the day, and the vice versa as well, the day into the night. So the Lord of all of this creation. Okay. Some of the Mufassirun, they go into detail. They say, why did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He talk about the Falaq? Why is it talking about the morning or the time when the night becomes the day? We seek refuge in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in these cases because they say in the night time, it's very different to the daytime, meaning the activities that take place at night are much different than what happens in the daytime. Okay, in the night, most of the evil or bad practices take place at night, not in the daytime. So we seek Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's refuge in what takes place in the night, and we welcome the coming of the morning. That's one interpretation of what the Mufassirun say. Okay. Good. Second verse. Okay. Oh, just another point as well is that the Mufassirun, they also said that just as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brings out the light out of the darkness, just as Allah brings out the light out of the darkness, which is the Falaq, is the same way Allah brings out a person's good health when they are ill. So the darkness is like a representative of sihr, or evil, or hasad, and the day coming out of this darkness is like one's good health, or one being cured from any evil. So this is another thing that the Mufassirun, they say, Al-Falaq, that Allah is the one who can do, He can bring the day from the night, and likewise He can bring the cure from the illness. So He's making a parable between lightness and darkness and magic, and the opposite of magic. The second verse is min sharri ma khalaq. Min sharri ma khalaq. Min means from, shar meaning the evil, ma of what khalaqa, what has, or what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created. The ma here, for the Arabic students, the ma in usul al-fiqh as well, we say the ma yadullu ala al-umum, meaning it means all. Okay, it's not making any exceptions to the rule. This is really important, and inshallah we can go through these principles of interpretation as we go through. That the default position of anything that's mentioned inside the Quran, when it says man or when it says ma, is generality. Okay, everything that comes in the Quran is general, except if there's evidence to show that it's specific to someone or something, and the evidence has to be very clear. Okay, so a very easy example. In Surah Al-Asr, Allah says, "Wal Asr, innal insana lafi khusr." Allah says, "Verily, al-insan, all people are in a loss." So the rule here is general. Every single person, male, female, young, old, everybody, unless there is evidence to suggest otherwise. And where does the evidence come? Allah says Himself, "Illa alladhina amanu," and He gives the exception to the rule. So whenever we find any rule, we always go with the default setting, unless there is evidence to take us away from that. Okay. In this case, min sharri ma khalaq, from the evil of all things that have been created. The Mufassirun further, they say that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the creator of all things. So this can be a bit mind-boggling for a few people. Allah is the creator of all things. Now, some will say Allah created evil. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also says there is nothing that Allah has created that is pure evil. Okay, we might not comprehend fully Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's hikmah, but nothing is pure evil. And one example we can take from that is the most evilest thing that exists is Shaytan himself. Okay, and Shaytan, for those who know the story, once Abu Hurairah radiallahu ta'ala anhu was given the responsibility by the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam to guard treasure. So after a battle, they had lots of treasure, lots of wealth, and the Prophet ﷺ told Abu Hurairah to guard this treasure. While he was guarding it in the night, a man came and he looked a bit dodgy and he's moving around. And then Abu Hurairah spoke to him and said, "What do you want?" And the guy just kind of just moved away. And it's reported that he tried to take something and he moved away. Then the following day, the man came again. And Abu Hurairah saw this man, he tried to take something, and Abu Hurairah grabbed him and said to him, "I'm going to report you to the Prophet ﷺ." Then the man begged Abu Hurairah and he said, "No, don't report me," and he asked for his sympathy. Abu Hurairah was a very soft man, so he let him go. When he let him go, Abu Hurairah didn't say anything to anybody, but when he saw the Prophet ﷺ the next day, the Prophet ﷺ said to him, "Ya Abu Hurairah, how was that man who came to you last night to steal from you?" And Abu Hurairah was shocked, because he's the only one who knew. So the Prophet knew of course, through wahy. And then Abu Hurairah narrated the story and said, "I let him go." Then the Prophet said to him that he's going to come again to you the next day. So the following day came, Abu Hurairah was firm. He said, "This time I'm going to take him to the Prophet ﷺ." So he came the second day to steal from the treasure. Abu Hurairah grabbed him and he was adamant to take him. But the man again, he said to him, please just let me go. And he begged him and pleaded and he let him go. And the same thing happened. The Prophet, he went back, the Prophet asked him, how was the man when he came last night? Abu Hurairah was shocked again. How does he know? The third time it happened, the man came to Abu Hurairah. Abu Hurairah grabbed him and said, this time I'm going to take you to the Prophet and report to you what is that you're doing. The man stopped him and he said to him, shall I teach you something that no one else can teach you? And Abu Hurairah said, tell me. Abu Hurairah was very hungry for knowledge, so he asked him what. And then this man, he responded to him and said, if you recite Allahu la ilaha illa al-hayyul qayyum in Ayat al-Kursi, if you recite this, then the shayateen cannot attack you. And the man left. Abu Hurairah then went to see the Prophet and he told him what happened. And the Prophet said to him, the man who came to you was Shaytan himself. Okay? So showing you again that even though the Shaytan is evil, even we still managed to get something out of him. Okay? And that was Ayat al-Kursi, the most powerful ayah in the Quran. So again, showing us that when we see evil around us, we might not be able to comprehend everything fully. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, there is nothing that has been created which is pure evil. Okay? So that's a side point for min sharri ma khalaq, from the evils of that which has been created. Okay. If we continue, وَمِن شَرِّ غَاسِقٍ إِذَا وَقَبْ. Now, as you notice, with the following few verses, we are moving now. So the first part was called أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ الْفَلَقِ. We're asking, oh Allah, give us your protection from, and then we list all the different froms, because there's wamin. So now we're listing all the things we want Allah's protection. So the first thing we ask is from all the apparent evil things that are around us. And then the following is وَمِن شَرِّ غَاسِقٍ إِذَا وَقَبْ, and from the evil of the ghasiq. The ghasiq is, the Mufassirun say, the intense darkness. So the most darkest part of the night. Okay, the most darkest part of the night. And you know, some of the Mufassirun, they also explain that in the night time is when most of the crimes, or when most of the evil or bad people come out and they do their trickery in the depth of the night. And so, وَمِن شَرِّ غَاسِقٍ, oh Allah, protect us from the evil of the depth of the night. إِذَا وَقَبْ, and it means when the entrance of this darkness or the setting of the sun. Okay, so when the sun is going, so what time is that? What prayer is that when the sun is going down? Maghrib. Very good, yeah. So from Maghrib onwards, we are seeking Allah's protection from what is outside. Okay, we are seeking Allah's protection from what is outside. Mujahid is the one who said that waqab means the entering of when the time of the sun comes. These names are important when we're talking about tafsir, that's why I mentioned them. So Mujahid was a tabi'i and he was a great mufassir. Okay, so when we talk about tafsir, these are names that we can't avoid. There are authorities in tafsir, and he was a student of who? Anybody know who he was a student of? Okay, write down. Mujahid was a student of Ibn Abbas. Okay, Ibn Abbas. That's why it's so important to know these names. Direct and Ibn Abbas, we know he was very close to the Prophet ﷺ. So what people like Mujahid say on verses of the Quran are, very powerful, authoritative. Okay. So, in another hadith, the Prophet ﷺ, he said, إِذَا كَانَ جُنْحُ اللَّيْلِ أَوْ أَمْسَيْتُمْ فَكَفُّوا صِبْيَانَكُمْ فَإِنَّ الشَّيْطَانَ يَنْتَشِرُ حِينَئِذٍ. In one hadith, it's a long hadith, but the Prophet ﷺ, he said that when the night begins, so the night for us begins at the time of Maghrib, when the night begins, the Prophet ﷺ said, keep your children inside, bring your children inside. Okay? And then he explained as well why. He said, because this is the time the shayateen, they come out. So this is something, part of tarbiyah, that we should all put into our children, that when it starts to, Maghrib is kicking in, everyone come inside. Okay? Unless obviously you have work to do, everyone should come inside. Why? Because the shayateen are outside. Furthermore, the Prophet ﷺ then he said also close the doors and mention the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So if at that time close your doors and close your windows, and as you're doing that, mention the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because the Prophet then continually says, verily shaitan cannot enter a place where Allah's name has been mentioned. Okay? So another possible problem between husband and wife, children and families, this is part of the tarbiyah process. Okay, that maybe it's a possibility that your doors and windows are open. Okay, you're staying out late at night. So when you're influenced by shayateen, the shayateen are coming into your house, they're affecting your children, they're affecting your families. Maybe this is one of the problems what you have inside your houses. So to follow the authentic sunnah is we should, Maghrib time, everybody come inside, close the doors. As you close them, say Bismillah, say Allah's name, and get ready for the night. Furthermore, the Prophet in the same hadith, he said, cover any bottles that you've left open, and say the word Bismillah as well, and any lights that you have left running. At that time they didn't have electricity, so what kind of light did they have? Candles. Yeah, candles. I remember when I was a child, we went to Pakistan many, 15, 20 years ago, and my nana, so my mum's dad, he used to have a light. So I'm sure you will remember, it made out of glass, a lantern, and you put oil in it and you turn the thing, and then you get a matchstick and you light it. So those were the kind of lights that they had at that time. And the hikmah behind turning out those lights is what? So once we blow out the fire, the candle, what's the hikmah behind that? What were houses made out of? Made out of wood, or in those times they made out of wood or clay, so things that were easily flammable. So if the light is there and they were to fall over, your house will burn while you're asleep. So the Prophet is also showing us to take precautions before you go to sleep. So that's this hadith also can be found in Bukhari and Muslim. Okay, so وَمِن شَرِّ غَاسِقٍ إِذَا وَقَبَ. So from the evils of the darkness of the night, as the shayateen come out at that point. The next ayah, the next thing we seek Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's protection from is وَمِن شَرِّ النَّفَّاثَاتِ فِي الْعُقَدِ. And that's directly relating to the story that happened to the Prophet ﷺ. We say from the evils of naffathati. Now, Arabic lesson, the verb is nafatha, okay, which means to blow. When you add a shadda onto a verb, it intensifies the meaning. Okay, so this is not just a blow or a few blows. Naffath, that means continuously strong blowing, referring purely to what? Magic. Okay, so when people they do magic, they blow on things. Okay, or they use some form of recitation or reading or something. So this is referring to that وَمِن شَرِّ النَّفَّاثَاتِ فِي الْعُقَدِ. What's a uqad? A knot. Exactly. So referring to the blowings on the knots. So referring to what happened to the Prophet ﷺ, but also in general, even today, if somebody has done sihr, okay, like in order to call it a taweez or something, what does it have inside it? Knots. Yeah, it has knots. Yeah, so they tie up, they do knots, or they put some writing in it or something. It's knots. It's nothing new. It's the same sihr. And this sihr is not new to even the time of the Prophet ﷺ. This sihr is ongoing. Which nation was like the most predominantly known for sihr? Egypt. Yeah, Egypt. Yeah, the Egyptians and the pharaohs. They were the ones who were known. And we know when Musa alayhi salam challenged them, all of them, 50,000 magicians, and they brought their sticks. And Musa alayhi salam was one man against 50,000 people. And with the help of Allah, he was victorious. So yeah, the sihr, it goes way back, but especially at the time of the pharaohs in Egypt, that's where you find a lot of the magic. Okay, so وَمِن شَرِّ النَّفَّاثَاتِ فِي الْعُقَدِ, and from the intense blowing on the knots. Okay, just to add as well the issue of the shadda. In Arabic, you say you have the verb qatala. Okay, qatala means to kill. If you add a shadda to it, qatala, it means to massacre. Okay, so this is the difference. Yeah, so if it's a qatala, it means to kill. If you add shadda, it means massacre. So many times, just by adding the shadda, it just intensifies the meaning. So the naffa 30 is not one shadda, but there's two shaddas. It intensifies the blowing onto the knots.
Could it also be a naffa 30 as in whoever breathes into the knots?
Yeah, could be. Yeah, could be that as well. The blower, of the knots. So protect us from the blowing of the knots and protect us from the one who blows into the knots as well. As I said, this is directly linked to magic, and we will talk about that when we do the issue of Surah Baqarah. What's interesting to note as well is that the Prophet ﷺ, did he know who did the magic on him? Yeah. Afterwards, when the angels came, they mentioned him by name. Yeah, they mentioned him by name. And then when it was said, when the companions realized and they heard who his name was, what was the first thing you think they said to him? Yeah, they said, give us permission, we're going to chop his head off. And the Prophet ﷺ said, no, just leave him. And he didn't even punish it, just left it. Let him be, okay? Showing once again the mercy and the rahmah of the Prophet ﷺ. But that doesn't mean that today, if somebody practices magic, I'm talking, of course, if you had Islamic law, Sharia, I'm not talking in this country or any other countries. So this is theory, that in that case, if there is someone proven of sihr of the Prophet ﷺ, he said the punishment of a sahir is qatl. It is the capital punishment, okay? Because he's delved into the unseen. He's committed kufr, committed shirk, and he's one way. Okay, there is no return for this person. It's the most evilest of acts to delve into sihr.
You know, say you said he is a Jew.
Yeah.
Does that mean they believe in this as well, and they understand the practice?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, exactly. So the time also, the Judaism is full of magic. They have a wing of Judaism, the mystics inside them. They have what they call a lot of the magicians are into this. What do they call it?
Kabbalah.
The Kabbalah. Yeah. Okay, that comes from ancient Jewish magic. Okay. Yeah.
But it's not accepted in their faith either.
I'm not sure what part of it is and what part isn't. I'm not sure. Okay. All right. So let's continue.
All religions believe in this kind of.
Yeah, they believe in the concept of sihr. Like even the Hindus, they're sort of.
No, but could you
But your question
call
is
him a
it part of
Jew
the faith?
because he's done that?
No.
Would he be outside of that?
I don't know the aqidah.
Okay.
Yeah, so I can't say. Okay, so let's continue, inshallah. Then we say the next discussion is the next verse. وَمِن شَرِّ حَاسِدٍ إِذَا حَسَدٍ. And then Allah protect us from the evil of the hasid. The hasid is the one who is doing the hasad. إِذَا حَسَدٍ. Now this is a very beautiful verse. Why? Because sihr is the most extreme. Yeah, because to do sihr you have to go to a magician, you have to commit kufr and shirk, you have to do some really evil things. And I've seen stories, I've seen with my own eyes, I've seen things, and wallahi, it's very scary and very weird what some people do. Okay, how in order for magic they might step on the Quran, they might defecate on the Quran, they will do some really, really evil things in order to achieve a small goal. So maybe a woman, she likes a guy that he's married, so she wants him to leave that woman, and in order to do that, she goes and does sihr or something crazy. We'll talk about that in Baqarah. But a lesser form is hasad. Okay, hasad is not sihr. Hasad is just jealousy, like really strong jealousy. And what the Mufassirun they say is that everybody has hasad. Like, it's light and it's heavy. The light version, everybody has it, okay? But we just control it. So you might see somebody with the latest phone or the latest car or a Ferrari or something, and you might think, I wish I had that. So it's natural, this happens. But what's important here is وَمِن شَرِّ حَاسِدٍ, from the first one is hasad, which we all have. Either, what does either mean? If hasad, if he then took action on the hasad. That's the important part, showing us that we all have that. It's natural that we all want what other people have. But if you take action on that in an evil form, then it becomes hasad. So this is human nature. Okay? So وَمِن شَرِّ حَاسِدٍ إِذَا حَسَدٍ, that the evil, the hasad, the animosity, or the jealousy, okay, of the person. Now hasad can be also, there's various types, but just to summarize, one type of hasad is that somebody's got, so mashallah, he's got a nice jumper with his name written on it. So I say, I like that jumper, I don't want him to have that. That's the type of hasad. Okay, another type of hasad is, I don't want him to have it, but I want it. So I'll do my best to remove it from him so I have it. That's an even worse form. Okay, so those are the extents. So one type of hasad which we all have is natural, that we like of what other people have. That's, you're not sinful for that. But the other type is when you don't want that person to have it. Okay, and then the third type is when you don't want him to have it, but I want it. Okay, so in this case, those are the three types of hasad. Okay. Now, hasad is nothing new, like we said. If we go back to the creation of Adam alayhi salam, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He created human beings, He told the malaika and He told Iblis, all of them, to bow down to Adam, and they all bowed down except for Iblis. And what did he say? Ana khayrun minhu, I am better than him. Yeah, hasad. That it should be me you should be bowing to, not me bowing to him. It was hasad again. Okay, showing us that this is an ancient problem. Also, if we look into the life of Habil and Qabil, two brothers, the sons of Adam alayhi salam, what was the jealousy between those two? It was a woman again, wasn't it? Huh? It was a woman. Yeah? So it was a woman. So two brothers, and one of them was jealous that the other one had the more prettier woman. And then when they both made sacrifice to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah only accepted the sacrifice of Habil. Okay? So Qabil became jealous, and his hasad, we said is natural hasad. So somebody may have a more prettier wife than you. I'm just giving an example of this scenario. But okay, that's inside your heart. But if you take action on that, either hasidin hasad, he took action on that, and his action led to the death of his brother. Okay, so this is when hasad becomes real. Yeah. Also, hasad, also there's one really ugly form of hasad when you do hasad to yourself. Okay, and this is also taken from another story inside the Quran, coming from Surah Al-Kahf, when the two guys that had the garden, yeah, the two guys who had the garden, they had the Junaid, and they both were happy about what they had. One of them was boastful, and he was looking at the other guy and saying, mine's better than his. So he said, وَلَوْلَا إِذْ دَخَلْتَ جَنَّتَكَ قُلْتَ مَا شَاءَ اللَّهُ لَا قُوَّةَ إِلَّا بِاللَّهِ. That if you had said that, okay, Allah would have protected your garden. You did hasad on your own garden, yeah, by showing off, saying mine is better, I have more fruits and plants, but he didn't say MashaAllah, he didn't say La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah, and his garden was destroyed. So sometimes you can do hasad to yourself, okay, showing us once again that the opposite of hasad is also showing off, boastfulness, being proud. Okay, Allah, the Prophet ﷺ, he said in one hadith that a person will not enter Jannah even if he has an atom's size of kibr, of pride inside him. So it's showing us here that we have to be careful of these things. So you can even do hasad to yourself. Okay, in one hadith the Prophet ﷺ, he said, لا يجتمع في جوف عبد الإيمان والحسد, that a person cannot have in his jawf, which is the heart, two things at the same time. You cannot have iman and you cannot have hasad at the same time. One will overpower the other. Okay, so we have to be constantly checking ourselves that are we purifying our hearts away from jealousy and hatred. The solution that we can come out with, the solution to this issue of hasad, the Prophet ﷺ told us this in the hadith Abu Hurairah, قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم لا تدخلون الجنة, that none of you enter Jannah حتى until تؤمنوا, until you believe, ولا تؤمنوا حتى تحابوا, and you will not truly believe حتى تحابوا, until you love one another. Until you love one another. The word here is tahabbu. We talked about this tafa'alu concept before, that it means both ways. Doesn't mean you love him one way. It's two-way traffic, that you all love one another. And that is true iman. And then the Prophet further, he said, أَوَلَا أَدُلُّكُمْ عَلَى شَيْءٍ, shall I not teach you something that will create this love inside you? He said, إِذَا فَعَلْتُمُوهُ تَحَابَبْتُمْ. If you do this, then you will all love one another. And what did he say? أَفْشُوا السَّلَامِ. When you see people say Salamu Alaikum, okay? People you know, people you don't know, spread the salams. It's easier to say salam to someone you know, but it's more difficult to say it to someone you don't know. Okay. Let's continue. So to conclude this particular surah, I want to just touch on, because I'm sure people are going to ask this in the Q&A, so I'll just address it now, the issue of the Prophet ﷺ being affected by magic. Now, the hadith are found in Bukhari and Muslim, muttafaq alayh. There are some people that later came and they had an issue with this concept, with this event. Many those who, the rationalists, who said, how can the Prophet be affected by magic? He's ma'soom. How can he be affected with magic? So they rejected the hadith. They rejected the hadith and they said this event didn't take place. And you'll find even some people today, I've heard a few du'at, they've talked about this issue, and they said that this didn't happen. It's not befitting for the Prophet ﷺ to have that have happened. Now I just want to touch on that. The first thing I want to respond to that is, as Muslims, our understanding of Islam, it does not come purely from rationale or from what you think makes sense. The Aql plays a massive role, but it is from the Quran and it is from the Sunnah. And if, of course, the Quran is on one side, the Sunnah, if it is authentic Sunnah, then this is part of our faith. Whether we understand it or we don't understand it, whether we comprehend it or we don't comprehend it, that's not the fault of the hadith, that's the fault of your brain. So you need to look at things a bit deeper, look at things from different angles, understand what is being said. Okay, there are issues, so don't try to change the text. It's you that needs to adjust yourself and learn what's happening. How can you understand the hikmah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? We don't even understand some very basic things, so how can we try to limit Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, limit wahy, limit that which you cannot limit. So when we find that the hadith is not even something which is mukhtalaf fi, this hadith is muttafiq alayh, yani Bukhari, Muslim, there is no doubt on the authenticity of the hadith. So some people will say that the hadith is ahad. Okay, this is a long discussion, I don't want to go into that now, but it's ahad meaning that it's narrated by a single person. Somewhere in the chain of the hadith there's one person that it all comes down to. Okay, This again is a fallacy. It is ahad, but so what? It's authentic. Our manhaj, or the position of the Muslim, is authenticity. That's what we're concerned with. Whether it's ahad or mutawatir, it doesn't make a big difference to us. It's what is authentic, and the hadith is authentic. So that's our first response to the fact that we can't reject that. Furthermore, others will come and they will use the ayah from the Quran. I forget what surah it is, but the verse is إِن تَتَّبِعُونَ إِلَّا رَجُلٌ مَسْحُورًا. That the Quraysh, they said to the Muslims, they said, oh, you only follow, إِن تَتَّبِعُونَ, that you only follow إِلَّا رَجُلًا مَسْحُورًا. A man who is mashhur has many meanings. One of them is the magic, the one who is affected by magic. So they use this the verse, those who oppose this hadith, and they say that the hadith contradicts the Quran. Okay, because the Quran is saying that he is not affected by magic, and the hadith is saying he is affected by magic. The response to that is very simple. Firstly, that this ayah was a general ayah. The Prophet ﷺ, this period where he was affected by magic, they say it was a very, very short period of time. It wasn't long, it was a very, very short period of time. Secondly, they say that the issue of the Prophet ﷺ being affected by magic, we have to understand the Prophet ﷺ as two people. Okay, so I'm not getting all Christian on you, but two people. That the first say is that he's a bashar, meaning he's human. The second is Rasul. So when he say he's ma'soom, the isma is on the risala, not on the bashar. As the human side of the Prophet ﷺ, he was human like you and I. He slept, he ate, he had a wife, he had children, so he was human. So he was open to human weaknesses as well. And that's not just the Prophet ﷺ. The prophets before as well were in the same way. So Ayyub alayhi salam, take the example of Ayyub alayhi salam. He was a prophet and he was a human, and he was afflicted with human illnesses. That happened to Ayyub. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala purified him from that and brought him back to his good health. Same thing with the Prophet ﷺ. Allah is teaching us that he is bashar. Yes, he is khatwal anbiya. Yes, he is the best of people to walk on this planet, but he was still a human being. This is what we've been taught. Allah said, yes, he was affected by magic, and the effect of magic didn't affect wahy. Because what some people will say is that, okay, if he was affected by magic, how do we know the Quran is real? We say, no. The magic, the Prophet ﷺ himself, he said that it only affected him when it came to him trying to be intimate with his wife. That he couldn't do it. That he just felt, he didn't incline to her. So he said this is the only place where the magic had effect. No one else from amongst the Sahaba, they realized any difference. So if it had affected him to the point where the Risala, or the Wahy was being affected, surely people around him would have said, what are you saying? What is happening? You look different, you're behaving different, you're speaking differently. Someone would have noticed, but there was no difference. Meaning that the magic only took effect on him being intimate with his wife, not on the issue of wahy and so on and so forth. So this is an important thing to understand, because you will find people trying to belittle the sunnah because they have a lack of understanding on this issue. And finally, the response to that as well is that Musa alayhi salam was also affected by quote-unquote sihr. When the magicians threw their sticks, like we talked about before, what did Musa alayhi salam see? He saw them turn into snakes. Was he not affected by sin? He was affected by sin. But do we say now, oh, he's not a prophet anymore? No, he was affected at that moment in time for a little while, showing us he's a human being, just like everybody else. That Allah did not send angels. Allah sent people amongst us to teach us. Okay, so that's another refutation to show that yeah, it happened. But most importantly, it was for a very short period of time, and then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala removed that from him, and he was back to his good health. But on a side note, when the Prophet ﷺ was passing away, he did make mention of the fact that he still suffered from some of the pains, okay, of the effects of magic, or some of the poisons that, some of the food that the Yahud had given to him. So he did make complaints of that. But irrespective, it didn't affect the Wahy, it didn't affect the Quran, it didn't affect Islam. So this is something we need to take note of. Alright, let's continue. The next surah, okay? Most of the content of the next surah has been discussed in the surah that we just discussed. That's why I took more time on the Falaq. But the An Nas is, some of it is repetition. But let's continue. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل أعوذ برب الناس ملك الناس إله الناس من شر الوسواس الخناس الذي يوسوس في صدور الناس من الجنة والناس. Okay, So the verse starts off very similar to the previous one. قُلْ, say, O Muhammad, أعوذ, I seek refuge in the Rabbin Nas, the Lord of An Nas. So the first one was the Lord of dawn, yeah, the morning, Falaq. And this one is now talking about An Nas. So here we take another qaida. In Arabic we call this idafa to tashrif. Okay, so what that means is whenever something is added in an idafa, is added to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or to Rabb, this thing has sharaf. It has a very important, or has significance in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So for example, if you say Abdullah, because the Abd, you connected it with Allah, now that thing has a great significance. When you say Baytullah, the house of Allah, it becomes something very important. So if you say here Rabbun Nas here, or Rabbin Nas, the Lord of people, so people becomes important. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has told us from the creation that the humans are the most important of creation. We'll come to that in a few moments as well. Further, Allah says Malikin Nas. So how do they translate Malikin Nas in the king, is it?
The king of mankind.
So the king of mankind. Okay. Again, the importance of using king. Those times, well, you can say even still to this day, who rules, who has governance, who has authority of people? King. Yeah? They're the most powerful people, the kings. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, Malikin Nas, He is the king, the real king of people. So you might be the king now, for a little while, for a couple of years, and you might have authority now, be a king, prime minister, president, whatever, but Allah says He is the real king. He is the one who is the real decision maker, and He's reminding you here that He is the governor of all things. Good. Furthermore, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also in this verse is further emphasizing the issue of Tawheed. Okay, that Allah is the creator of people, Allah is the creator, the king of all things, which is showing us the proof of His existence. In the third ayah, He says, Ilahin Nas, the Lord of all people. So, look how Allah is addressing people. That Allah said He is the Lord of people, He is the King of all people, and He is the God of all people. Refuting who? So when you say God of people, there are those who say there is no God. So here Allah is refuting them, so Ilahin Nas, that I am the Lord of people as well. And even this concept, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asked those people, the mulhidin, or the people who didn't believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, about His very existence. In the Quran, Allah says, أَمْ خُلِقُوا مِنْ غَيْرِ شَيْءٍ أَمْ هُمُ الْخَالِقُونَ. That say to them that أَمْ خُلِقُوا, did they, were they created مِنْ غَيْرِ, without nothing, أَمْ هُمُ الْخَالِقُونَ, or did they create themselves? So you've got three options. When you look at creation, and this is a good response to the atheist, and they will get stuck on this point, there are three options. Your option number one, Allah says, is what? خُلِقُوا مِنْ غَيْرِ شَيْءٍ, were you created from nothing? And no one will say that something comes from nothing. Second, He says, أَمْ هُمُ الْخَالِقُونَ, did you create yourselves? So you will naturally say, of course, you didn't create yourself. What's the last and final option? That you were created. Ilahin Nas. Okay? That there is an ilah for all people. There is no fourth option. If you can find a fourth option, let's put it in here. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He dealt with the atheists as well. So they left with no response. Even the atheists, they struggle on this point. Creation, they're still trying to find out. You can say the Big Bang, you can say, you can come at all these things. No problem, we don't deny that. But in order for anything to happen, something must bring it into existence. Nothing can come from, something cannot come from nothing. So your circle, how far back you go, you want to make us monkeys, you want to make us atoms, you want to make us Big Bang, whatever, it will have a beginning. And that beginning, no matter what theory you follow, at the end of the day, it will be an ilah. If you're scared to say Allah, or you're scared to say God, just say force, whatever you want to say. But it will be something much more powerful than what you can imagine. And for us, it's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So Allah deals with that as well. وَمِن شَرِّ الْوَسْوَاسِ الْخَنَّاسِ, and from the evils of the waswasa. The waswasa is the whispering. Okay? The waswasa is the whispering.
Can you repeat the first one?
Ilahin Nas.
Yeah.
Okay, so the Ilahin Nas, we're talking about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala being the Lord of all people. Okay, so the discussion, like I mentioned, of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I forget what surah is, maybe Musa can remind us, أَمْ خُلِقُوا مِنْ غَيْرِ شَيْءٍ وَهُمُ الْخَالِقُونَ. It's a Tur. Tur. Okay, so Surah Tur verse 35. That's the ayah there. Also, good thing reminded me here. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Malikin Nas Ilahin Nas, that Allah is the king of all people. Okay, another beautiful verse inside the Quran where Allah talks about the end of times. Everything is going to be destroyed. Everything that has been created is going to be destroyed. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that He will fold up all of universe, all of creation. And when there is nothing, then Allah will say, Liman al-mulk al-yawm, who is the king today? And then Allah will say, Lillahi wahid al-qahhar, that it is only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who is the real king. And in some of the narrations they say that where are the kings? Where are the tyrants? Where are the jababira? Where are those who committed oppression and tyranny? And where are you today? No one, except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this is also we take out from Malik al-Nas, Ilahi al-Nas, min sharri, from the evil of the waswasa of the khannas. The waswasa is the whispering. Okay, the waswasa is the whispering. Okay, and the khannas is the one who withdraws. How do they translate khannas? Retreating. Okay. So min sharri al-waswas al-khannas, so subhanallah, from the whispering of the one who withdraws. So who is the one who whispers and then once he's whispered runs away? Shaytan. Subhanallah. So even Yawm al-Qiyamah, when they will ask, when someone says, it wasn't me, Shaytan told me. Shaytan will say, no, I didn't tell you. I just gave you the idea. You took the idea. I didn't tell you to do it. I just gave you an idea. It's up to you. And then your nafs and your evil took you to it. So Allah says, min sharri al-waswas al-khannas, that He comes and He whispers in your ear and then He runs away. Okay, min khannas. So, and then He says, alladhi yuwaswisu fi sudur nas, the one who whispers in the chests of people. Okay, that doesn't mean your chest, but it means you're inside. He gives you the ideas. Yeah. So all of us are tempted with evil, and those things come in our minds. We think about things, good things, bad things. We're all humans. They come inside our heads. So this is Shaytan. He's given things away, and we know our nafs. We have three different types of nafs. Nafs al-lawwama. Okay, nafs ammara bis-su', the one that inclines towards the evil. The nafs, the part which inclines towards evil, will listen to this waswasa. And then it depends how strong your iman is. Are you going to carry it out or are you going to stop? And if you're strong in iman, you'll realize this is waswasa. And if you know it's waswasa, what would you say? Yeah? You know this is Shaytan, he's tempting you. You know the famous story of Imam Ahmed, that when he was on his deathbed, you know this man, Imam Ahmed, was said Shaytan had problems with Imam Ahmed. He couldn't unfold it. And they said Imam Ahmed on his deathbed, he was on the verge of dying, his son was next to him, and he was dying, and his father, he said, not yet, not yet, not yet. And then when he gained consciousness, his son asked him, Imam Ahmed, said, Father, you're about to die, and you're saying, not yet, not yet. And he said, because Shaytan came to me, and Shaytan said to me that, oh, you're too strong for me, you've done well. He said, he tried to affect me just before I died. And I said, not yet, not yet, I haven't gone yet, I'm still alive, not yet, not yet. So Shaytan will come to you and whisper in the hearts of mankind, and will try to take you astray. And then the last verse, min al-jinnati wan nas. Beautiful verse. This verse, it basically connects up everything. So it says, min sharri al-waswas al-khannas, from the one who whispers and then runs away. Alladhi yuwaswisu fi sudur nas, he gives you ideas. And he says, the one who does this is from the jinn as well as the nas. So there's shayateen ul-ins and the shayateen al-jinn. So some of the jinn, they whisper bad things to you, and some of the humans are also, just like the shayateen, they also whisper to you as well. So just in the same way, you want to avoid being with the shayateen of the jinn, the same way you want to avoid being with the shayateen of the human beings. Because some of them are no different. They just maybe look a little bit better. So they're
bad company.
Bad company. So here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us that be careful, that Shaytan has an army, and some of it is in the form of jinn and some of it is in the form of humans. And Ibn Taymiyyah has a beautiful book on this as well, the awliya Allah wa awliya Shaytan. He has a beautiful book where he talks about the awliya, those who are the friends of Allah, and those who are the friends of Shaytan. And then he talks about their characteristics. So it's a beautiful book. It might be in English, not sure, but the Arabic is there. Okay, now I want to conclude, and the last thing I want to conclude on is the issue of waswasa, because we went over it quite quick. But the issue of waswasa is very important. Why? Because a lot of people complain of waswasa. A lot of people, they complain about waswasa. The issue of waswasa is the person is not confident or not, we can say, is not firm in what they think. They're always doubting things. Okay, so from amongst some of the things that a person can be affected with waswasa, the issue of somebody like they go to make wudu. And wallahi, I know people and I've heard of people that will go to make wudu and they will wash their hands and then they'll wash their arms and then they'll wash their arms again and they'll 15, 20, half an hour just making wudu because then the water didn't reach here, the water didn't come here because it's an illness. And then they'll step outside, leave the bathroom thinking they've done wudu. Once they left the bathroom, they think, oh no, maybe I forgot. They go back inside and they start there making wudu again. It's an illness. And this waswasa can affect anyone. Even in prayer, the person could be in prayer and he might think, oh, I've broken my prayer, start again. Broken, he'll just continually do that, you know. And you find that this affects a lot of people in their lives. They can have the issue of waswas, okay. So this needs to be treated. Many common places where waswasa happens is the issue of wudu. The person is always afraid that they're not clean. So they're cleaning themselves, cleaning their clothes, making constant wudu. The other one, like I said, is in their prayer. Okay, you might have seen this one. It sounds funny, but it is an illness. Sometimes you find somebody who come into the masjid praying, and he will come to pray, and he will make his niyyah out loud. Okay, so it's common in Asian, even in Egypt, you find people, they will stand up and they will say, "Anwi salat al-dhuhr, arba'a rak'at, ittijah al-qibla," and they'll make the full. They'll say a niyyah. And then they will say Allahu Akbar, and then they'll stop, and then they'll readjust themselves, and they'll say again Arba'a Rak'at, Allah, and then they'll stop and say, there's just waswas. They think I haven't done it properly. My niyyah is not correct. Allah is not going to accept it. Just constantly being affected in the mind. This is an illness. So these things we have to overcome as well. And the advice that the ulama give, initial advice, there's obviously a procedure on how we can overcome waswas. But one of those is the ayah where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ مَسْتَطَعْتُمْ. Fear Allah to the best of your ability. That if you have done the wudu and now you're doubting it, just move. Just leave the bathroom and go pray. If you're in the middle of the prayer and you're thinking, oh, maybe I broke my prayer because I started to think about this, just ignore that and just carry on. Go with that which is certain and leave off the doubtful matters. So فَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ مَسْتَطَعْتُمْ. This is the opening way to cure any kind of waswas. But obviously there are further things as well. The ruqya will kick in, your iman, your connection to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will kick in, your general cleanliness, your adat, all these things will also kick in. On that note, I think I have done, we've completed those two surahs. Okay, I do have one more thing to say, but let's take questions on this surah before I move to that. Anyone got any questions? Yeah.
Is the hasad leads to ain as well?
Yeah. Okay. So ain is very similar to hasad. Trying to differentiate them is a little bit different, but the ain is sometimes, or most cases, done unintentionally. Okay. So the ain is when you look at somebody in an envious way. Okay. Like you see someone wearing something nice, or maybe somebody is successful in their life, and you just look at them in an evil way, and that can affect them as well. The Prophet ﷺ said, "Al-ainu haqq," that it's real. Okay, so we have to accept that somebody can cause you harm just by looking at you. Okay, that's why the Prophet ﷺ taught us that whenever we see something nice, what do we say? MashaAllah, tabarakallah. You say it loud or say it, but just say it. Okay, even if you don't feel there's a reason, just say it, just for your own sake and for the person you're looking at as well. But if somebody overpraises you, you say it. Okay, just to be sure. Somebody keeps saying, MashaAllah, this person is amazing. Just say, MashaAllah. Just cover yourself. So this is the response to, what's the question? Yeah. So, the ayn is something which is unintentional, and the hasad is also unintentional, but it's something, in order for it to take effect, either hasadin, either hasad. Yeah, so if you act upon the hasad. Okay, and then the third stage, the worst stage, is sihr, because sihr now, you're actually physically going to do something and you're engaging with the ghaib. Okay, so those are the three different types. Any other questions?
So many people who just, when something goes wrong, they just think that someone has done something to them. It's very common, especially back home, and I've seen that they are making to those people this and
Yeah.
So and they, many of them are, they just go, are after money, and they said yes, so What do we know? How do we truly know that it's true or not?
Yeah, so finding out whether a person is affected by magic or not is diagnosis, just like any illness. Yeah, if somebody is affected with illness, you don't sit at home and say, yeah, he's got TB. No, you just say, oh, well, his face is a bit red, his legs are shaking, or I think he's got tuberculosis. You have to go through diagnosis. The same thing with the issues of sihr or ayn or hasad is a diagnosis. And it goes through counseling, it goes through people who are learned in Islam. And one of the signs to know somebody is learned is his Tawheed is correct. If he's mushrik, I'm putting it blank, yeah, straightforward. If he is engaged in things that are dodgy, okay, like going to the graves, doing weird stuff at the graves, you know he doesn't pray, he does weird actions, he's not on the sunnah, he's not following the Tawheed of Allah, then avoid this person. Because 99% of the time he is the cause of the problem. Many people, they go to see a raqi thinking they're going to get solved, the problem is going to get better, he makes it worse. Because he's one of those who's involved in shirk. So the Tawheed that comes back to understanding Allah properly, go to those people. Okay? Yeah.
What do we do if we know that there is a certain person we are sure that this person has attempted or trying to put magic or someone? How do we advise them, and how do we protect ourselves from being a victim?
So we need to know the location. So if it's in a place where Islam is governing, then your response will be different. If you're talking about other than that, then your response will be different. But I'm assuming it's the latter. In that case, that if you know somebody who's doing magic, in my humble opinion, the person needs to be warned. Number one, okay. And if there's no change in that warning, then he needs to be exposed. Even if it's someone close to you, he needs to be exposed, because his harm is not to himself, his harm is to other people as well. You're harming other people. You're ruining people's lives. You're ruining people's marriages. You're ruining people's health. So if he doesn't or she doesn't take heed of what he or she is doing, then they have to be exposed. And then the wider community should know that this person is a magician.
For those people who don't believe that the event took place that the Prophet is affected, they still believe that those two surahs are wahi.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what's the reason for the Sabah Nuzul?
Those who say that, what's the reason Sabah Nuzul? That's a good question. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, so those who believe the Prophet wasn't affected by magic, then how do they understand the verses of Surah Falaq and Surah An Nas? Surah An Nas is not issued by the Falaq. Yeah, we can have a look at that.
If you know someone's evil or not disliked, can you wish evil on them? Or
no, you shouldn't wish evil on them. You should not wish evil on them. But here we will go into the details of this when we go through the ayat from Baqarah, because it's detailed. Because magic is of different types. For example, if I pull a rabbit out of my pocket now, yeah, am I deserving of capital punishment according to Sharia? That's not magic. That's trickery of the eye. So we have to be sure that the person has actually done magic. So this is the first thing before we start telling the community or start blaming him or start shouting down. So maybe he's just doing tricks, confusing people. But if it's real magic, sihr, yeah, going to the unseen, then this is something you have to deal with differently. Yeah, so we have to be sure of what we're saying.
But I say in Muhammad's case, could he have wished for bad upon that person because of the situation?
The Prophet has prayed against people during the lifetime. Yeah, so there was a time when a group of people, they came to the Prophet, they were hungry and thirsty. I want to cut a long story short. The hadith is in Sahih Muslim. That a group of people came to the Prophet, they were hungry and thirsty, and the Prophet no, let me give you a different story. So once a group of people, they were asked for the Prophet to send them people to teach them Islam. So the Prophet he sent them a group of 50 or 60 of the best of Sahaba who learned the Quran and were well learned in the Deen. He sent them to these people. When they got there, what did they do to these people? They killed them. Yeah. The Prophet when he found that his best 60-70 people had been killed, he became extremely upset. And they said for the next 50 days, every time in Fajr, he would make qunut. He would raise his hands up in qunut and he would make dua against these people and their nation. He would make dua against it. So we can make dua against people at times. Yeah? So that is possible. But do we hate people? I would say no in that case. Yeah?
Is it true that the magic affected the Prophet in the sense that he used to forget which wife he was with on a certain night? And if that's true, then can people say maybe he forgot some of what he learned?
Yeah, good question. So that's what I was talking about before. It's possible because the issue of magic was all relating to him and his wives. Yeah. So some say that he wasn't able to be intimate. Some people saying that he didn't know whether he had been intimate or not. But it's all on that subject. Yeah. So here, when we confine this issue, we're confining it only to the bashar, the human element of the process, not the wahy. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He said, we are the ones who revealed the Quran. وَإِنَّ لَهُ حَافِظُونَ. We are the ones who preserve this Quran. So the wahy is not affected. Yeah. Also, وَمَا يَنْتِقَ عَنِ الْهَوَى إِنْ هُوَ إِلَّا وَحْيٌ يُوحَى. That what the Prophet says is wahy. There are so many verses in the Quran where Allah says Allah protects the Quran. Everything He says is wahy. It's all preserved. So even if you say that, the generality of the Quran tells us that the risala, wahy, is protected. So the issue of magic only affected him in one thing, and that was with his wives. Yeah? Yeah.
Is it good to go around, because you know there's hasad and sihr, is it good to go around like doubting people? Because like if you go around like that, then you're not going to be able to like do your everyday things without being paranoid about those sort of things.
Yeah, good question. So should we always suspect people? He's looking at me a bit funny. She's been looking at me for half an hour. Should we start suspecting? No, just ignore it. Just live a normal life. Don't just ignore it. These are just knowledge and information, just like all other information. But just be aware. So, for example, when I say be aware, what does that mean? That means when you wake up in the morning, you do your adhkar. When you go to sleep, you do your adhkar. When you're traveling or you feel a bit scared or a bit worried, read Ayatul Kursi. Don't worry, somebody's looking at you, let him have a look. If somebody you think is doing hasad, it's his problem. You're doing what you need to do. Don't suspect people. Because then otherwise we become a nation of paranoia and then waswasa kicks in. So don't ever go down that road, just leave that aside. Okay? Unless there's clear evidence that you know somebody is doing magic. You know this person is doing it. Like somebody walked into his house and there was nothing on his arm. He walked out of his house and he's got a black thread around his arm. You know something has happened. So in those cases you are aware. Otherwise we don't suspect anyone. Yeah? The default setting for Muslims is that a person is innocent until proven guilty. So we don't suspect any Muslim. Yeah.
In what situations can you expose somebody?
Generally speaking, it's when it pertains to public harm. Okay, so if their evil is going to harm the public, then that's where you can expose them. In general. But it's always best to advise people in closed doors. Even the Prophet ﷺ said that if you're going to advise a tyrant ruler, take him somewhere private and advise him privately. It doesn't mean you can't advise him openly, you can do that as well. But the Prophet ﷺ also said advise them in private.
You can send them the video.
Yes, you can do that. Who are you talking about, the rulers?
Yeah.
If they listen, they don't listen to anyone. Someone got a question here?
Are there obvious signs to know whether you have been?
Yeah, there is. There's a whole science to it. So they can tell by the way you talk, by the way you're reacting.
No, but would like say if I'd been cursed or whatever, would I know, or how would I be aware that something's been?
There are signs. There are signs that a person has been affected. So your habits will change, your eating habits will change. You might start
maybe
losing
someone
weight.
would help.
Yeah, there's clear things like that. Something's wrong. Yeah, question.
And that one on TV?
I'll come to that in a second.
As we have learned today about the effect of magic on Prophet ﷺ regarding wives, isn't it a lesson for us to learn that if we are affected by the magic, if we feel like it, we only stick with one wife?
I don't think magic or the number of wives has anything to, they're not connected. If you can handle more than one wife, go for it.
That's magical.
Yeah, that's magical. If you can't, then just stick to one. Okay, and I think most people in this room are lucky they've got one.
Sorry, is there a reason why they would put on at the end of the Quran these two? Is there any? Do you know?
There is one wisdom. They say that the first surah is Fatiha, and the whole of Fatiha is a dua. Ihdina Sirat al-Mustaqim is a dua. The last surah in the Quran is An Nas, and what is it? Qul a'udhu bi rabbin nas is a dua. So they say the Quran opens with a dua and it finishes with a dua. This is one of the wisdoms of why it's done in that order as well. Okay? Anything else? The question is, inshallah, after Ramadan, I'm working at the moment on Islam channel. There's going to be a weekly program, hopefully Friday evenings for 2 hours every Friday. where we'll be talking about magic and sihr, and we'll be interviewing people who've been affected by magic. We'll be hopefully exposing people who are fake Rakis as well. So it's going to be an ongoing year's program. Every Friday we'll be talking. So in the moment,
UK based, as in
sorry?
people you expose in the UK.
We're not. It's not. The objective is not to expose people, but to expose fake practices. Because the vulnerable people, especially women, have been exposed, to going to these people and money and all sorts. Okay. Anything else? Yeah.
Linking back to your point, like, say if we do black magic coming up, is there any way to get rid of it or?
To get rid of the magic. Yeah. So the first point would be ruqya, because Angel Jibreel alayhi salam, when the process was affected, he did ruqya on him, meaning he used to read Quran from that person. Now, ruqya is a little bit different than just reading Quran. Okay, reading Quran you're just reciting, but ruqya is where you have the firm intention to remove the harm from that person. And there is a procedure like what type of surah you should read and how you should read it. Muslim. Yeah, so they have the different surahs that you should read, which are more effective when it comes to the ruqya. So especially those verses relating to jinn, and those they are the ones mentioned. Also other things like the ajwa dates. What did the Prophet say about ajwa dates? Yeah, if you have 7 ajwa dates in the mornings, then this will protect you from magic throughout the whole day. Okay. Other things as well, for example, we're talking about intimacy and those things. The Prophet ﷺ gave us du'as for everything, even du'a when you're intimate with your spouse. Okay, so there's so many different ways in which a person can protect himself from the shaitan. And so we talked about food, we talked about entering the bathroom, for example. You were saying protecting from the shayateen. Yeah, so cleanliness. So there are many other ways. Inshallah, we'll talk more about that in Baqarah. Anything else?
I've also learned that you don't know any ayah, then Surah Fatiha is the best one.
For the Fatiha is a cure,
Cure.
is a shafa. So Fatiha is a cure for all problems. Anything else? Yeah, last question. Yeah.
West Indian class today.
Today there is no West Indian class. Okay, today there's no West Indian class, but next Saturday there will be a class.
Before Maghrib or
After Asr. After Asr up until Maghrib, inshallah. There will be a poster and they will be sent out, distributed so you can see it. But today there is nothing, because we're not sure whether tomorrow is Tarawih or today is Tarawih. We don't know what's happening, so there's a bit of uncertainty, so not happening. Any other thing, anything else? Okay, young man, got a question? Okay. All right. Barakallahu fikum. Subhanakallah wa bihamdika. Ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.